First impressions are incredibly powerful, and often they happen without us even realizing it. Within just a few seconds of meeting someone new, our brains rush to form an opinion about who they are, whether we can trust them, and what kind of relationship we might have with them. It sounds extreme, but studies show that we typically form these judgments within 7 to 15 seconds, and sometimes in as little as 1/10 of a second when looking at a face. That means by the time someone finishes saying, "Hi, nice to meet you," we've likely already made up our minds about them in some way. This process happens so fast because it's largely unconscious and driven by nonverbal cues. Things like body language, eye contact, facial expressions, tone of voice, grooming, posture, and clothing all play a huge role. Even subtle signals like how fast someone speaks or how firmly they shake your hand can impact how we perceive them. Words, surprisingly, come into play much later. Why does the brain do this? From an evolutionary perspective, rapid judgments helped our ancestors assess whether a stranger was friend or foe. This survival mechanism still operates today, though the threats have shifted from physical danger to more social concerns, like whether someone can be trusted, is competent, or is likable. One of the most fascinating psychological phenomena tied to this is the primacy effect. The idea that the information we learn first disproportionately shapes our overall impression. If you meet someone who seems confident and charismatic at first, you're more likely to interpret their later actions in a positive light, even if they slip up. On the flip side, if your first impression of someone is awkward or negative, it takes a lot of effort and time for your brain to revise that opinion. Let's take a real world example. Imagine you're interviewing two candidates for a job. The first candidate walks in, makes solid eye contact, smiles confidently, and gives a firm handshake. Their appearance is neat and they seem relaxed. The second candidate, equally qualified on paper, enters looking nervous, avoids eye contact, and stumbles through the greeting. Even before the interviews begin, you're likely to feel more favorable toward the first candidate. That first impression colors everything. You might interpret the first person's answers as thoughtful, while seeing the second person's similar responses as unsure or weak, all because of how the interaction began. This leads us to confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out and interpret information in ways that support our existing beliefs. So once we've formed that initial opinion, our brains are looking for clues to back it up. If someone we see as trustworthy does something questionable, we might excuse it as a one-time mistake. But if someone we already judged as sketchy does the same thing, we might take it as confirmation that they can't be trusted. Another interesting concept is thin slicing, made popular by Malcolm Gladwell in his book Blink. Thin slicing is our brain's ability to make surprisingly accurate judgments with minimal information. For instance, researchers have found that people can often predict a teacher's effectiveness just by watching a few seconds of a silent video of them teaching. However, this same skill can lead to unconscious bias, as it relies on patterns we've learned, some of which are flawed or unfair. Changing a first impression is possible, but it takes effort and consistency. Psychologists suggest that repeated positive interactions, genuine vulnerability, or impactful actions can gradually shift someone's view. But the reality is, it's much easier to make a strong first impression than to undo a weak one. That's why understanding the psychology behind it is so important. It can affect your relationships, career, and even the opportunities you get in life. In the end, the psychology of first impressions reveals just how much power those early moments hold. Whether you're meeting someone for a job interview, going on a first date, or just introducing yourself to a new group of people, being aware of how the brain works can help you navigate social situations more effectively and maybe even give others a second chance when they need it most.